All right. Well, hello, everyone. Happy Wednesday. Thank you for joining us today. This is the Rosenfield webinar series for auto dealers. I'm Kathy. I'm the webinar organizer, and super excited to have you guys all here. For those of you who may be new to Rosenfield and Company, we're a CPA firm. We specialize in the auto industry, and our goal with this series is to bring together industry experts for real world conversations and insights that you can apply in your dealership.
You're fading in and out a little bit. There we go. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, so we have a really great session today. We're happy to have Bert Rasmussen back. It's always great to have him. And we're excited to welcome Matthias Stoever from Rock Ed. They're going to be discussing the FTC's renewed focus on pricing transparency and what dealers should know.
Yeah, I just sent a note to Bert.
Bert is here.
Bert's here.
Okay, cool.
We lost Bert.
Hi, everybody.
But he's back.
Hey, Bert.
No worries there. Just want to send a quick reminder, we have a Q&A chat feature, so it's
You're fading. I can't hear you.
you guys can't hear me. All right,
You're back now.
That's good.
Okay.
Yeah, Alicia.
You can't. You're fading in and out. I'm sorry. Is that me or?
No, I think it's for everyone.
Okay. And you're on mute now, Kathy.
Yes, go ahead, Alicia. You can go ahead with your.
Okay. Hi, everyone. I'm Alicia Webb. I'm your lively moderator. Who always has questions at the end. And this topic, I think, is very timely. The whole FTC letter is like the gift that keeps on giving, and not in a fun way. So I think it's great that we've got the legal aspect from Bert, and then how you can try to build a culture at your dealership that will make people want to do the right thing in compliance. And so with no further ado, I guess I'm turning it back to you, Kathy, or turning it over to Bert. I'll leave it up to you.
Bert, I'm going to go ahead and go to your first slide if you want to get started.
All right. Thank you very much. Good afternoon, morning to everyone. It's a pleasure to be here to speak about this topic, which I think is very, very important and timely. We've got this first slide, and I'll go through some of these bullet points in a minute, but I thought I would first just take a minute to try to put this into context for us. The real genesis of this happened back a couple years ago during the Biden administration, when the FTC was intent on putting out the FTC CARS rule. I think everybody probably remembers the hubbub about that. And it really was a comprehensive rule that would have put into place a number of regulations on advertising, vehicle pricing, and other things that went well beyond anything really the industry had seen before in trying to micromanage the vehicle advertising and sales process. Ultimately, that was defeated in court with a court holding that the FTC had not properly gone through the administrative procedures that allow agencies to come up with binding rules. And then when the administration changed, the Trump administration, the FTC kind of was calibrated in terms of leadership and so on, and they did not pursue going through the proper channels to create that CARS rule that had been out there and fought back and defeated. So everyone thought, well, good, we're no change, status quo, we don't need to worry about that anymore. Except, of course, out here in California, where the legislature said, hey, that CARS rule was a great idea. It really put a lot of restrictions on these dealers that they're always, for some reason, suspicious of. So they decided to pass their own law, which effectively we've got now. It's coming online and coming this October, and it's going to pretty much require California car dealers to do what the original FTC cars rule was intended to do. And so we're going to live under that regime here. But anyway, okay, California is an outlier, perhaps in the mind of a lot of people, but the rest of the country could breathe easy. Well, wait, here comes, March or so of this year, and the FTC releases publicly and with a lot of as much fanfare as they could muster as a boring federal agency, that they're sending letters to 97 car dealership groups stating that they are violating an existing law, the FTC Act, it's called, or Section 5 of the FTC Act, which pretty much is just a law that says you can't have deceptive business practices, including advertising, and that these vehicle pricing problems that the FTC identified would violate that act, and the dealer groups better take care, and everyone else implicitly, by letting this go out publicly, need to take care that they're not in violation of these concepts that the FTC laid out. So what we're here today to do is to just go through a bit of that. I'm sure most of you have been part of some kind of forum or program where this has been discussed before, because it's been, when it hit back then in March, the thought was, let's immediately try to find out what the contours of this are and what we can do to push back on it, perhaps. And NADA got involved, and there were some webinars for FTC representatives tried to explain themselves a little more. And after a couple of rounds of that, a little more light was shed on it, and we know a little bit more about what to do. But still, it's a major kind of change, a surprise, if you will, that the FTC is going to enforce this kind of pricing transparency by way of the Section 5 of the FTC Act. And I think I've covered most of what's on that slide. Let's go to the next one. Okay. Well, what does the FTC mean by this new approach and regime in vehicle pricing? Before I get to the simple test that I think we can reduce all of this down to, sorry, I'm going to silence that. We can look at exactly what the FTC had said in their letters. They identified 6 different practices that they said dealers need to avoid. The first is advertising a price that does not reflect all required fees. All right, and this is where I think the announcement raised the most hackles in the dealer community is, what about the doc fee, or the document preparation fee? The way that's treated across the country is different in lots of states. Some states, it's the sky's the limit. Some states, you can have one, but it's set to a cap or a maximum. Some states you have to have one, very few, 1 or 2 states that's mandated that it be done. But in all of these cases, the general approach would be that it was added on to the advertised price, not baked into the advertised price. Because if a doc fee is baked into the advertised price, it basically means there isn't a doc fee. So that was number 1 on the FTC's letter, and number 1, I think, concern among dealers. Next is advertising a price that reflects rebates or discounts not available to all consumers. Okay, so this is a lot of this letter, FTC letter, and what we're talking about today has been identified as to what's really going on. And on that one, you're talking about the most prominent price. You've got a price that says this is the most prominent. that's the price the FTC is focusing on. That's the price. They do not want it to reflect the inclusion of discounts or rebates that are not available to everyone, every single person. So you understand that that's what's talked about there. And then if you talk later in an ad about available rebates or discounts, then that availability needs to be disclosed somehow to allow people to determine if it's really possible to even have it. Third item is advertising a price that fails to take into account the amount of additional required down payment. That's a little bit of a item that's not really done and that I've seen very much anymore, where you basically say, well, you know, it's $15,000, and below that you say subject to customers' initial or includes customers' additional deposit payment of $1,000 or something. I don't think anybody's doing that, but that was one thing they put on their list. Next, conditioning the advertised price on consumers using dealer financing, requiring consumers to buy additional items not reflected in the advertised price, which is a major one we'll get into some more, in advertising unavailable or non-existent vehicles. So if you take all of that and what we've learned from the FTC over these various webinars over the months, we can boil it down to a simple test. Can the customer buy the vehicle exactly as it sits for the advertised price? So you're going to have an advertised price or a price posted or a price disclosed. It needs to conform to the idea that that's the price for that vehicle, only taxes and government charges being added to that price. That wraps up the dock fee. That wraps up the idea of putting prepackaged equipment on the vehicle that you know is not included in the advertised price, and it wraps up the idea that you've got rebates or discounts that may not necessarily be applicable, that they're going to be deducted, but can't be deducted first because they're not available to every single person. So the FTC CARS rule, as we say, was vacated. We've got the California CARS Act running under that rule, and we have everyone now operating under this FTC enforcement regime. All right, next slide. When we talk about the advertising the vehicle being advertised is the vehicle, as I said, as it already exists, with the dealer installed accessories, appearance and protection products, and other installed equipment. Ask yourself, is everything already on the vehicle reflected in the advertised price, and are later added non-governmental charges creating a different purchase price? If so, you've got to change that or figure out why somehow you could justify doing so. Okay, next slide. Big question on this that is very confusing and still in need of state-by-state evaluation and development of complying practices and procedures is dealer add-ons, and also in states where they're allowed or required, supplemental stickers. A supplemental sticker or an addendum is you know, a document that goes next to the MSRP Monroney label, generally, which would reflect there are items on the vehicle that are added in you know, kind of a traditional classic approach. Dealers would put these on to reflect that the price is higher than the MSRP due to various added items. At this point, there are states that require a supplemental sticker if the dealer is going to charge more than the MSRP. There are some states where the supplemental sticker has to follow a certain format, but it isn't required, even if the price is going to be higher, like California. And there are some places that don't regulate them at all, but they're still used. If dealer installed equipment is separately disclosed, you've got to be sure that the pricing remains clear and consistent. In other words, if you've got a supplemental sticker that shows that the vehicle price adds up to a certain total, then that's going to be your advertised price at all times. You're not going to be able to advertise the pre-addendum price and then have an addendum on the vehicle. That would show that you're really not advertising that vehicle at the vehicle price that the dealer is pricing the vehicle. So the supplement, how to integrate the supplemental sticker in with the idea that your advertised price is going to be an all-inclusive price can be difficult if it's mandated that you have the sticker, and the mandate in the state says that any dealer add-on product has to be itemized on there. Probably the best thing that can be done is to have the all-in price as the starting line on the supplemental sticker, and then have if the state mandates that the add-ons be disclosed, they can be disclosed with a price of 0 so that they're subsumed within the advertised price, the top line price on that sticker. In California, we have a rule that if the supplemental sticker doesn't exceed that price, then the format of the sticker has got to show that excess amount as either optional accessories or a dealer added markup. With the advent of both the California Cars Act and these FTC enforcement actions, that's really amended to require that the dealer price, that everything basically go into dealer added markup, because the dealer isn't going to be able to advertise the vehicle with existing packed items or pre-installed items, even if they're optional, because the concept of the original cars rule, FTC cars rule, and now the California Cars Act, is that prepackaged items really have to be included in the advertised price. They can't be made optional and somehow taken out of that advertised price. Right, next slide. Now, of course, with that said, any kind of optional products, hard ads, or certainly F&I products such as Gap or other products still are important, and they still can be sold. They still can be priced, but this is going to have to be in a regime of much more demonstrable, provable optionality. These things are optional, and that they've been purchased without any use of leverage or insistence or changing of what the customer expects the price to be. This is difficult, of course, but certainly doable. And the existence of rules that mandate this make the playing field more level, so that dealers can hopefully play in a fair, competitive market and make these products available based on their value and on customers' needs, as opposed to trying to insist that they be purchased, or if not purchased, negotiation take a turn because the customer has some kind of surprise. So that means two things in practice. One, that you can demonstrate that your practices and procedures, from the marketing department down to the sales department, down to the F&I department, are on the same page, and that know that these optional products truly need to be presented in an optional manner, and you can demonstrate that's what you do. Second, the kind of metric that's used to determine whether this these rules are complied with is the penetration rate on optional products. So if you have a penetration rate of a so-called optional product up above 85, 95%, and somehow that optional product and your treatment of it gets in the crosshairs of the FTC, private plaintiffs, state regulators, they're going to look askance at your claim that it's truly optional, given that penetration rate. It's a little bit counterintuitive, but it may be good to take a look at all of your portfolio of optional products and look at the penetration rates. And if they're high, congratulations, but that would be a good product put under the microscope for a bit to see how it is we're handling that, to be sure that you do have a good, chain of evidence. This is what we do. There's no question that this is optional. We are not pre-packaging it in or anything of that kind. So I would definitely recommend that people go through and do that little exercise for the real high penetration products. Okay, next slide. All right, so the greatest risk areas include here, as I said, dealer installed products that are not reflected in the advertised price. That is something that is a complete red flag. In California, as I said, and under the original FTC cars rule, it's just not ever allowed. You're basically saying that if you're going to install something, pre-install something, you're going to have a price that reflects, in California, you're going to have a price that reflects that's baked in as the advertised price. That's it. If it's something that can be subject to an optional upgrade or additional coverage, then that certainly could be sold in F&I as an optional enhancement to what's on there already. But if there's a physical ad, you're not going to, in California at least, and there's really an open question as to whether this is going to apply nationwide. You're not going to be in a position to say, well, this vehicle already has a $1,000 piece of equipment on it, but if you don't want it, we'll have to take it off, and you still pay the same advertised price we had for it already. Additional non-governmental charges, of course, this is the clear one with the dock fee or any other fee that isn't a tax or government mandated fee. So sometimes, as we all know from getting our restaurant checks and our hotel bills and all of that, that there are things that get added that you look at and say, well, what's a labor enhancement cost or something? And why did they charge me 2% for that? Well, yeah, same thing here. We're not going to be able to come up with some kind of additional charges that we add on to that advertised price. And if you're doing advertising, it needs to be something that the customer is able to come in and on the spot get. So that subsumes all these problems over the years of advertising something that isn't available. Oh, that car's been sold. Well, why has it been advertised for the past week? Oh, that car is coming in and it hasn't quite got here. Well, why did you advertise an in-transit vehicle that you didn't absolutely know would be here when the customers arrived to purchase it? Tariffs have intervened and we can't sell it at that price anymore. No, if that happens, take that ad off. If something has caused a change in your cost, you really are responsible to be the party that ensures that the advertising that's out there is current. And of course, this raises the giant question nowadays of what is advertising? Well, advertising is anything that you're communicating publicly or even directly. So it's not only your own website, it's the follow-on websites of the aggregators and the others who are putting out vehicles that you have for sale, or it's your sales force that maybe is working deals by text or social or anything of that kind. So it's it's easy to say for me as a lawyer that, oh, well, be sure your advertising does all of these things. But unfortunately, it means that you need to have a process that would rein in all of those various tentacles of advertising and marketing so that they're all on the same page. That's what we say here about advertising is part of the every department in terms of vehicle sales. Okay, next slide. So, as I said, for this, training is really the best compliance tool. People involved in every department that we've mentioned need to know what the rules are. They need to know how to perform their job functions under those rules. And they need to know that it is something that the organization takes seriously and has put processes in place so that their job can be done by following those processes, and that they need to do it, have someone to go to ask for questions. All of these things are really important, and I encourage everyone to take time to go through that right now, because there are opportunities, I think, with this new oversight by the FTC to have a level playing field, as I said, in vehicle advertising and sales. So it's important to be able to be the beneficiary of that by being compliant, as opposed to being a potential target in any legal proceeding. Okay, next. So 5 practical takeaways. 1, can the customer buy the vehicle exactly as advertised? 2, does the advertised price include everything already on the vehicle? 3, are only taxes and government charges added? 4, are optional products presented separately from the vehicle price? And 5, can the dealership consistently support the price it advertised? In other words, show that you're selling at the advertised price, show that optional products are truly optional. All right, I think, let's see, was there one more slide? I can't recall.
No, that was your last slide.
All right, that was it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And now we'll pass it on to Matthias.
Yes. Thank you, Bert, and welcome everyone else from my side. My name is Matthias. I'm one of the co-founders at Rocket. We're a training, learning, development, and coaching platform. And what I would like to talk about is probably a little bit of a different angle on the topic, because I think it's, as Bert said, of course, there's a lot of things that need to change. There's a lot of things to pay attention to. It's a lot of work, right, for every dealer. What's come up here? Yeah, as you said earlier, Alicia, I'm not sure if everyone sees it as a gift. I don't want to convince everyone that it is a gift, but I also want to offer a perspective that this is, it's clearly also something like where I think, going back to the webinar title, transparent pricing, stronger dealerships, I do believe that this is a topic that is there's a way to look at this, that this is beneficial for the industry, that this is beneficial for dealerships, because if you really look at, especially, right, I think this is mostly about a topic that concerns new and used car sales. And if you look at the margins in that business, I think they are, maybe if you forget about the years of COVID, but I think typically those margins are rather thin. And I think if you take a look at industries that are operating with a very high pricing transparency, right? Just think of financial services, like they have to disclose every interest rate and everything that's there. SaaS companies disclose all of their pricing, everything right now that you need to know about token spend and AI. There are a lot of industries that operate with very high pricing transparency, and those industries operate with much higher operating margins than in new car sales. Of course, not everything is comparable, but my point is that I don't believe that pricing transparency itself is a margin killer. I think pricing intransparency is actually something that drives a lot of friction, right? This is why is this topic even coming up? It is because consumers complain to the FTC, and I think they said it on their webinar, that car dealerships are a main reason or a main driver of complaints to the FTC, and that is why the FTC is also looking into that topic. So I believe that pricing transparency is also a way to make dealerships stronger and to, of course, take out a lot of friction out of the dealerships. And of course, like everyone can think, there's a lot of ways to think about Carvana and Tesla, for example, as some of the companies that you all compete with. But I think, of course, a consumer that sets foot into a Tesla showroom or that goes into a Carvana dealership, they don't see price as a friction because both companies are pretty transparent about it. And I think that also makes the customer interaction with them a lot easier, and of course also saves both companies a lot of cost that probably dealerships spend on this. So that is the point that I would like to bring across today in the slides that I'm presenting, and really to, on the one hand, provide an outside-in view to this topic, and on the other hand, of course, also to show you like how is actually how can you see compliance not only as a legal topic but also as a topic that has to do with culture, that has to do with leadership. Again, we're Kathy, I'd like to ask you to go to the next slide, because clearly I think it's a dilemma, right? Everything that's being transparent or pricing. I understand it's a dilemma for a lot of dealerships. So the most famous dilemma, and please allow me to take a short excursus here to game theory, but some of you might have heard about the prisoner's dilemma. It's two prisoners that both offered a deal. You can look it up, and they have the chance to either betray the other prisoner, to be absolutely transparent. And I think the whole point of this dilemma is that both prisoners have an incentive to betray each other, have an incentive to act in a way that doesn't maximize the benefit for society. And it's a very classical dilemma. I'm not, but it also describes like why compliance, why also the FTC, in some cases, like needed, and why it can also be beneficial here for an industry as its whole. Because of course, I understand it is a dilemma for a salesperson. It is a dilemma for a store. A lot of dealers that I talk to, right, they always say, well, I'm compliant. I want to be compliant, but the dealership down the street, like my competition, they really make it hard for me, right? And that is a true dilemma. That it is sometimes like, yeah, there might be like Bert said, people in a deal, employees might act outside of compliance. It is a dilemma that there is an incentive for a store or for bad actors in the industry to actually operate outside of pricing transparency and to operate shady, right? It's probably a very small percentage of dealers in the country, but of course these dealers make it very hard for everybody else to be transparent. So how do you fix a dilemma like this? I think the point of the prisoner's dilemma and in game theory is that sometimes you need an external stimulus, or you need external help to fix a dilemma like this, and to go back to operating a situation that is really beneficial for an industry as its whole. And I think that is, of course, where compliance comes into play, and sometimes also an institution like the FTC comes into play because it enforces compliance. And I think we're totally understand that this is a lot of work. There's costs associated with it to look at all these things. I think vendors that you need to work with. I still believe that overall, like increasing pricing transparency will be good for the industry, and I also think it's gonna, because it reduces frictions. I think it's also going to be good for margins in the industry. So let's go to the next slide. And so what is, in the end, what is compliance, right? I don't want to, I'm not a lawyer, so I'm not going to come from a legal perspective here. I see it more as actually a beneficial business behavior to be compliant. I think Warren Buffett says culture and compliance determines how an organization behave. And that is really culture and compliance, or compliance as a part of culture, is how we see it, and how compliance also needs to be seen by dealerships, by all kinds of organizations. Right? It is not only a legal topic. Of course, there are rules, there are laws, there are audits, there are disclosures, like how you need to handle driver's license. I think there are clear things that you need to follow, and those are the minimum guidelines that you must adhere to. And some of those topics are also like codified by law, but it is also a culture topic, and it's very much also a leadership topic, right? If the people in an organization, right, people will look left and right, like how do people behave? How does my colleague behave? How does leadership behave? So I think it really starts from the top in every organization, whether that's a dealership or any kind of company, that compliance comes from the top, and it's also very much a culture topic, because there will always be gray area. Well, is that now compliant, not compliant? I think it's very much, I think culture, one of our dealer partners said it, it's about doing the right thing. And I think that is, that's a good guideline also to be compliant, like especially in areas where, see on the FTC topic, right? There's a lot of things where there are no clear guidelines yet. Should you see this? How should this be seen? I think doing the right thing is a good advice in those situations. And I think it's very much a culture topic. And of course, it's also being built every day, right? It's compliance is also picking up trash that's lying around, right? That already sets the culture of compliance. And I think it starts with every single detail, right? I don't know, like disclosing a mistake that you made. I think those are all things that that drive compliance and that drive the culture of an organization. Of course, combined with sound legal advice and certain measures that you just need to put in. If we go to the next slide, does it pay off to be non-compliant? I would say no. Of course, there are some examples that everybody knows. Enron also, I think they had it in their core values that they wanted to be driven by integrity and compliance. They were clearly not compliant in the way they wrote their invoices and they wrote they built their revenues. Bankrupted and the entire organization. Many people lost their jobs. Being non-compliant doesn't pay off. First Brands, a supplier in the automotive industry, similar issues. Also a lot of fabricated invoices. It ruins ultimately a company and will result in a lot of lawsuits, legal proceedings. Another example, First Brands and Enron might probably be known to many of you. I think another good example for something that the FTC went after is a company called Fashion Nova. They reached a settlement with the FTC because they were suppressing negative customer reviews. And it's a small settlement. It's not something that I think reached the news here like a scandal around Enron. But I think it's a good example also. Yeah, what happens when compliance fails, right? It is, I think it can ruin a company. It can cost a lot of money. And I think even further, I don't think it makes any company more valuable. I don't think it makes a company more profitable to be non-compliant. Because of course, if we go to the next slide, there are a lot of organizations that all of us deal with on a daily basis that I would say are very compliant or very pricing transparent. Costco is one, right? I think they're the business ethics and how they treat customers and what they put at the heart of their interest is very much driven by compliance and doing the right thing. A very valuable, very admired organization there. Apple, fully transparent on pricing transparency, right? Still crazy gross margins. A very compliant organization, very transparent on its pricing, and I think they set the standard for an entire industry. Johnson & Johnson is a company that's known in compliance circle as a company that's really defined their credo around compliance, around corporate ethics very well. Also a very, very valuable organization. And I think what all these organizations have in common is that I don't think there are customers who would describe that there's friction when going to Costco or that there's friction when going into an Apple store. And the compliance and especially pricing transparency takes a lot of the friction out of the game for a customer. I don't know if Costco is always the cheapest. I know that they're very transparent how they display pricing to me, and I have zero friction when I go into a Costco, and I know the hot dog is just $1.50, and I think they're pretty adamant about this. So right, this is I really think it does pay off to be compliant, and it does pay off to be very transparent about pricing. So how to go from here, Kathy? If you go to the next slide. How can you drive a culture of compliance? Clearly, as I said earlier, it is ultimately something where leadership sets the tone. Anybody who is in a leadership role, whether that's a dealer principal, whether that's a general manager, whether that's a department head, anybody sets the tone for compliant behavior along all the decisions that we make every day to do the right thing and to behave in compliance with the law, in compliance with the rules that you set for yourself as an organization. Of course, it needs to be safe to speak up. I think mistakes happen, and I think it's do you have a culture where somebody can admit that they made a mistake, admit that that disclosure to a customer wasn't made, or where it's safe to speak up and own a mistake and then fix it. Of course, Bert also said it, training is important. I think there's a lot of nuances and things where you also need to train people, like what does it actually mean to be compliant. It's not always just, we need to teach people what is actually doing the right thing, right? A lot of rules, like think of like how you report cash, or what to do with driver's license, how to handle personal information. Of course, training is needed for people to know what also right and what wrong means, because sometimes wrong, you might feel, I didn't even know that this was wrong, right? And that is where training is needed. And clearly also to make sure that you hold people accountable, but that also you recognize, right, that you can recognize transparency, right? Recognize, for example, F&I managers that have very few cancellations. I think that's something that should be recognized, because those F&I managers, I would assume, are in many cases also very transparent and very open about explaining customers the value of the products, the pricing of the products. And I think that is also something that needs to be recognized in the same way as somebody who's selling a lot of cars or is crushing it in their different roles. Last slide here before I come to an end. Of course, that's a little bit about us. If you're ever interested in taking a first step here, we built a small information series that really explains this entire topic around the FTC, summarizes what's been discussed so far, and that is you can download this. You can download our app. You have then access to this course, and it's an information series and summarizes a lot of the things that that the FTC said and what was disclosed in different webinars webinars and talks like this one here today. I do believe the journey is not yet over. There's a lot more that needs to be clarified, and we're here to also help during that process. But I really do believe that a dealership that supports a culture of compliance, a culture of pricing transparency, will be a dealership that will grow faster, that will have better customer reviews, that will ultimately also be bigger, bolder, and more successful in the industry compared to somebody who is non-compliant. And that is what I believe is a culture of compliance. Thank you. And I'll give it back to Alicia and Kathy.
Thank you, Matthias. All right, everyone. Well, thank you, Bert, and thank you, Matthias, for sharing your insights today. I hope everyone found it very insightful. And if you'd like to continue the conversation or explore how any of these concepts can apply to your dealership, we are happy to connect. I have contact info on the current slide, and the recording and the slides will also be shared. So keep an eye out for that email. And with that, thank you all for spending your time with us. We look forward to seeing you at our next webinar.
Wait, are we doing questions?
Oh my goodness, did I forget about questions?
I'm like, I've been sitting here jotting down notes.
Alicia, thank you. This is why you're here.
Yeah,
Okay,
like,
forget what I said. We have a shy audience today, so we haven't had any questions come through, but I'm sure you have something, Alicia.
Okay, so Bert, when y'all get involved, is it like to help a dealership that's been caught, or is it to help a dealership? I mean, tell me how Scali Rasmussen interacts with dealerships regarding compliance.
Yeah, well, I mean, the main, fortunately, we do not have a limit on working with folks when they're caught. Of course, if someone is being pursued by either the FTC or a state agency or any other enforcement mechanism, we get in there and give the best defense we can for that issue. Sometimes the defense is that we did acknowledge a problem, but look at us now. We've put a compliance program in place and we're doing right by it. Sometimes that's the necessary approach, but by many measures, it's going to be the counseling folks on how to comply, what the details are. And as I said in the presentation, it's a state by state endeavor because although we're talking about the national FTC rule here, you have to continue to comply with whatever your state says is supposed to happen with pricing, with, like I said, supplemental stickers, with advertising rules that apply to the state in terms of, for example, stacking rebates in pricing, even stacking them outside of the price advertised on the top line. So there are a lot of things that folks need help with on compliance, how to comply. Like Matthias said, it would be great if we could rely on the idea that if people were honest and ethical and fair and want to absolutely do the right thing, that we'll be fine because the law is symmetrical with that. But unfortunately, there are many things that seem to be perfectly fine and fair, but the law says, no, you can't do them. So, we get into those areas.
Cool. I think we have a question, or is it a comment, Kathy?
We do. We have a question from Lisa. Have there been any have any letters from the FTC gone out since the original 97?
I can't answer that definitively. I haven't heard of anything going out other in terms of more letters. Remember that first batch of letters, the 97, was to say that this is effectively a warning that these practices are of concern and take care not to engage in them. Any further follow-up enforcement letters might have gone out and not been revealed publicly. So we don't know what's gone out that hasn't been revealed publicly, but I don't believe there have been.
I have a question for Matthias. So if you're a dealership that you've developed this culture of compliance, you do training, you follow all the steps that you recommend, is this something you should advertise in some way, or do you just kind of want your actions to speak for themselves? Because it seems like pointing out that you're compliant then leads to people thinking, well, why are you telling me that? So is this something that could even be a marketing point for a dealership, or is it just something that should be kind of a word of mouth? This dealership group is very transparent thing.
Yeah. Well, I think I don't think you can advertise that you're compliant. I think every customer would assume that they're acting with a compliant dealership. But of course, it's right. Think of some of the companies that I mentioned, right? Like if you look at how does Apple advertise and talk about pricing? Take a look at the websites of the dealerships that Carvana acquired. I think they're very straightforward with how they treat customers, and I think a lot of that has to do with compliance. I think you can find ways to ensure that customers who do business with you understand that you're very transparent on your pricing and very upfront about it, and that you don't need to haggle with the dealership. A lot of dealerships that in the country are on a one price model, right? And those are things that I do believe pay off, and that is where you can also advertise it, but by focusing probably on pricing transparency, less on saying that you're compliant. I don't think a customer would. I would take this as given that the dealership that I work with is compliant and follows the letter of the law.
Cool. Do we have another question, Kathy? I can't really tell.
We do not. Looks like somebody was typing a question, but no, nothing yet.
So is there this for both you guys, is there one area of the dealership business where compliance is especially, like an issue or important? Because I always think, oh, F&I, because a lot of money goes through there, but just outright pricing seems to me to be maybe the most difficult area to ensure compliance. So is there an area where it's more difficult to ensure compliance in the dealership operation? Any thoughts on that, anyone?
Well, I mean, the biggest hurdle to me with compliance, if we were talking about operating a candy store or something, and the compliance issues were, get the right weight and give the customer a receipt on the candy, it wouldn't be that bad. But in the auto world, auto dealer world, we have so many branches that come out on this thing. I mean, you've got not only, as we said before, the multiple branches that now exist in terms of marketing and advertising with especially electronic advertising now being the predominant form of it, and the many, many different approaches that can take. But you also have the idea that the product, is a vehicle, right? This is the vehicle. That's what we sell. Well, wait, we also sell service contracts. We also are partners with the, one of the various wonderful providers out there like JM&A, or someone who has all kinds of other products that customers could really benefit from if they took a look at it. And we've got, a organization that's kind of stratified into salesperson, sales manager, all that kind of stratification, and people, are not 100% in every case sure what their role is on various aspects of dealing with all those different channels I just mentioned. So it becomes a kind of it's not so much like one thing is the problem. It's the fact that there are so many things that have to be addressed, I think, that makes the compliance here in this industry difficult.
Come on, participants. Okay, one more question from Matthias. So did y'all get after the FTC letter, did y'all get inquiries from dealers saying, do you have any compliance training? Do you have a compliance training series that we can use? Were you getting demand for this? Because then you came out with that kind of product. So were you getting requests for that, or did y'all just think, well, clearly there's a need for this?
Yeah, no, but I think clearly we create our content and put our priorities where the priorities of our dealer partners are. So we had a lot of requests, and I think there is a big need for clarification on this topic. And like how Bert already said it, right? Like I think training is the best. What did it say on the slide? Like the best lever to ensure compliance. I think in situations where like you're being caught being uncompliant, I think it's also, correct me if I'm wrong, Bert, but I think it's also a mechanism in the defense to say, okay, now we fixed it. We have something in place that where we as an organization want to ensure that we are compliant, and that maybe there was one bad actor, but it's not something that is a structural part of how we do business. So yeah, clearly I think there's a bigger need for compliance training more than ever. And I also think it's not, you shouldn't see it just as something that saves me legal fees. I do believe it makes the dealership better, improves the customer experience, and ultimately will also lead, like what the webinar title says, will lead to a stronger dealership. And that could be a more profitable, a bigger dealership, a dealership that's being reviewed better by their customers.
Cool. Well, that's all I have. Do y'all have any questions for each other? Sometimes we get our panelists quiz each other, which is always kind of fun.
Yeah, I mean, but like Bert, I don't know, what are you seeing right now with dealerships, clients that you're representing? Like, I don't know, what's the sentiment that you're seeing in the industry?
Well, I would say that right now, like I said, out in California, we're all gearing up for this CARS Act to take effect. And it's interesting because the thing I just spoke about, the kind of many branches of players in the industry and vehicle sales and F&I are all having to get together to face that. It's really a system And so you have form vendors, right, that sell forms for dealers to use to document various things. They have to be part of it. The aftermarket product companies, especially those that have some kind of insurance or service contract or warranty type coverage, they have to know what's going on. And because each of these inputs affects the other. So we're just like drowning in all of that right now to get to the point of the deadline coming up in October.
Cool. Over
And
to you, Kathy. Oh,
I think that's that I really appreciated Matthias's comments, and I certainly advocate the same concepts that he's laid out as well. They were very insightful, and none of this is going to happen if the leadership at the organization doesn't commit to it.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you all for staying here, and Bert for sharing your legal perspective, Matthias for sharing the compliance and training side. I think it was a great session, and thank you all. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.
bye, y'all.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.